Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mudahar, and guys, modern PC gaming is like going to a gentleman's club at like a Tuesday morning. It's kind of like. If you're going there to complain, at some point you've been there. You know what's happening. You have lost the right to complain at what you're about to see. You might be like, why are you making such a crass comparison? Well, I've been talking about PC gaming and a lot of problems with it, guys. I'm going to be real with you. PC gaming is expensive. It can be very expensive. And I just don't understand the cost-benefit analysis anymore. So there's this game called Borderlands 4 that came out, and I'm just going to be completely level. I think the game's great. It's got mixed reviews. And the reason it's got mixed reviews, buckos, is because it uses something known as Unreal Engine 5. I'm sure some of the eyes have opened up. You guys have probably been like, uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. So again, ladies and gentlemen, Borderlands 4 drops, and hundreds of thousands of people are playing it, and I've actually been having a pretty decent time. Now, I bought it on the PlayStation because I knew, going full well, if I was to buy this game on the PC, I was going to be a very sad fucking panda. So my experience with the PlayStation version of the game is pretty rock solid. I had one crash, I guess. The game runs at 60 frames for most of the time. It will dip down to 50, sometimes in the 40s if there's a lot of shit going on the screen. But one of the reasons I wanted to get it is this should not shock you. The game runs with split screen. I know, what a novel concept in 2025. I wanted to play the game with my bro, and we got together. We played some Borderlands on the split screen. The game runs fine, solid 30 kind of frames per second. It does drop if there's a lot of shit going on, but it really did feel like I was back in the 360 days. Better days for gaming. And overall, the game is good. Like, I'm not a huge Borderlands fan, but I will say it kind of feels like, Borderlands 2 at its best. And that's a pretty sterling compliment for the series, especially after the last game that dropped. So why are we complaining about this game? Well, it's the actual performance. I cannot recommend you buy this game on the PC, and maybe even the console, because there are things like FOV sliders that aren't even available. So to give you an idea, this is a scientific graph done on Borderlands 4. So the game is running at 4K with the badass settings. Now remember, this is a modern, cell-shaded, no ray tracing gimmicks, none of that shit, okay? This is a fucking cell-shaded game that kind of looks pretty similar to like previous Borderland games. Like if you fired up the Handsome Collection or some like upscaled version of 2 and 1, and even 3, I have one right here actually. If you fired this up on your actual PS5, you probably would actually confuse all 4 games at some point. The art style kind of tends itself to like really good looking visuals. But ladies and gentlemen, on the graph here, an RTX 2080 Ti gets about a 10 frame average. Now you might be like, well, that's an old GPU, Muda. At 4K with the highest settings, sure. Okay, young Padawan, what about a fucking 5090, okay? Now, before we go into this, I want to show you the price of a 5090. The price is $3,400 Canadian, okay? I remember back in the day when I used to see like cards like the Titan. You remember the fucking Titan? The GTX Titan? It was like $1,000, and I was like, whoa, what is this made for, okay? Is this made for the gamer that exclusively dines on beluga fucking caviar? No, this is like a $3,400 GPU now. Thank God I can save $230. What a brilliant deal. And I love how they're asking me to redeem Borderlands 4 with it. No, I will not redeem that code, okay? Because you know why? The game runs at 40 fucking frames per second at 4K, badass settings on a 5090. Homie, if the best GPU on the fucking market can't even hit a baseline of 60 on a shooter game, we've got problems. Now look, there's a lot of games that come out, and they tank every system. When I was a kid, there was this game called Crysis that used to fucking bend over a system. Like, your PC could walk in, yada, 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 okay? As soon as Crysis walked down its path, it would bend it over and fuck it up the ass, because that's how intense that game was. The difference is, Crysis at the time genuinely, and still is, a pretty mind-boggling experience. It was an amazing looking game for its time that, granted, probably had optimization issues for sure. I would have to look a little deeper into it, but it still generationally looked far beyond anything. And even to this day, if you play around in its sandbox, it's still an amazing looking game. Brilliant physics, brilliant everything. Borderlands is not that. It's a fucking cel-shaded looter shooter. Now, I wouldn't be making a video about this if it wasn't for the cope fest that Randy Pitchford was putting out. Now, I think Randy Pitchford is probably one of the fucking... At some point, motherfuckers have to learn about shutting the hell up. Randy does not do that. So, Randy starts sharing, if you're playing Borderlands on PC and want to boost your performance, this streamer, which, by the way, they have their streamer rigs, which usually are a cut above the standard person, okay? I would wager that most of you guys gaming probably don't have the highest end GPU or the CPU. You guys probably have something normal, okay? This person shared a settings tip where they were able to jump from 90 frames to 160, okay? So what fucking tip was given here? What tech tip was provided, huh? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the gamer in question decided, I'm gonna go and I am going to turn on frame generation. Now, frame generation is not real fucking frames, okay? Basically, a frame-generated frame is like you have one real frame from the game, and then one fake frame that is AI-generated, and then it's between another real frame. So basically, it's just interpolation, but you can feel the input lag at times. Now, generally, a lot of the technology is pretty cool. It works for some games, but it's not the catch-all be-all. And it's funny because Randy is promoting a technology that exclusively sits at an RTX 40 series or above. Now, I'm sure there's some people who are like, but Muda, AMD has frame. It's true. There is software level frame generation. If you have an older GPU, there's a piece of software called lossless scaling. Download it. You might be able to save your performance somehow from there. But generally, stuttering, bad performance in general, if you're not even getting 60 frames, generating fake frames on top of that is always going to feel pretty dog shit in comparison. And it's funny too, because the further you go down into this, yes, Borderlands goes from like 45.4 FPS on the top end RTX 5090. So if the top end isn't hitting it, again, we have severe problems. And it's not just, again, the main systems. If the actual console version of the game has issues itself, if they're not even optimizing it for the PlayStation, there is not a fucking chance in hell that the PC side is gonna get issues. Now, I feel like every time like a bad PC port comes out, it's not even just Randy, it's not even like just his company. You know, we looked at Monster Hunter Wilds for being fucking utter dog shit on release. Games like Dragon's Dogma 2. Hell, I remember when Final Fantasy VII Rebirth came out, I bought it again on PC because I really enjoyed the Final Fantasy remake project. And I was like, you know, I want to play this game with like super ultra wide and everything. Bare bones PC port, and the worst part was it stuttered more than Jimmy Vollmer from South Park, okay? Like this fucking game was going freezing for like solid seconds, even though it did every form of prep work before it decided to load the game. Just a poor release all around. And of course, obviously, we had to go into it and find random fixes. The gamers had to patch the game up in some unofficial way to make things work. These game companies are not even putting in an effort to make sure that the products they release are functional. So here's the actual insanity that Randy decides to go with. Every PC gamer must accept the reality of the relationship between their hardware and what the software they are running is doing. So yeah, actually he's right. You should understand. You know, if I was running Borderlands 4 on the crap top that I made the first few haunted gaming videos on, I would argue, yeah, Randy, you're fucking right. But I have shown you in this video, that's why I front-loaded it with empirical data, that even the most high-end shit that you can buy on the market, nothing more high-end than that, okay, still has the game run like dog shit, okay? Randy has not properly addressed it and said his cope continues even further. We have made an amazing and fun and huge looter shooter campaign game. The game is pretty damn optimal, which means the software is doing what we want without wasteful cycles on bad processes. Even though the game apparently possibly has a memory leak inside it, which means after a while, things just start to slow down and ultimately crash. So I don't know how much testing you really did. I think if the top-end systems can't even handle your game, I weep for people that have actual attainable hardware. So with Borderlands 4, every PC gamer has a lot of tools to balance their preferences between FPS, resolution, and rendering features. If you aren't happy with the balance between these things you're experiencing, please tune to your preferences using the tools of it. Homie, we have fucking tried, okay? You can run the game on the lowest settings possible. You can run it on you can modify the Unreal Engine 5 INIs at its fucking base level. And the game still runs like dog shit. What do you fucking mean? There's plenty of options. The options still, even at the lowest, they're not doing enough, dude. We appreciate the incredibly high degree of passion and excitement there is for the game we've been developing for over 6 years. We know strong feelings lead to strong opinions. Bro, it's not that. This is a paid-for game. People paid money for this. They paid money. They gave their money to you. This isn't a free-to-play game. If it's a free-to-play game, sure, okay, whatever. I can't bitch about it. I'll just uninstall your game and move on and jerk off or whatever. But I paid for this experience. I paid for this. You know, I don't go out. You know, this is the equivalent of like a game developer, all right? First off, let me just be real. I get game development is difficult. I understand, okay? But also, here's another example. If I go to a nice restaurant and the food comes looking like dog shit, okay? This place is like super nice. You know, at some point I'm gonna have to complain to the fucking chef, okay? And it really is up to the chef if the food is right. Because that is your job. That is what you're supposed to do. You are producing a product and it's supposed to be at that level of quality. Steam is not the Salvation Army, okay? Gamers are not just donating to you out of the kindness of their heart. They're giving you their money for a functioning product, okay? And I'll be real, if your product isn't functioning, go get a Steam refund. Go get a refund from any store. PlayStation, well, maybe not consoles, because the game does run decently fine on the console, but at least for the PC side, you're paying the same money for complete dog shit. Anyways, so down over here, it is a mistake to believe or expect that PCs between minimum specifications and recommended can achieve all of extremely high frame rate, maximum ultra features, and extremely high resolutions. It's not even just that, homie. The top-end processors and both for the CPU and the GPU, the top-end system configurations are having problems. And even if like they're just achieving 60, 70 frames, telling those people to then do frame generation is even dumber on top of it. If the last post makes you have a negative reaction, I bet you have emotions and expectations that you feel aren't sufficient. Man, what a fucking asshole, bro. Go watch your magic tricks, Randy. Fuck off. But please accept that the game is doing a lot and running pretty optimally, and that you may have to accept some trade-offs between FPS features. There are a few real issues, but they are affecting a very, very small percentage of users. We are also doing significant work on PC performance. And why didn't you do this before the game dropped? I just don't understand. You had 6 years to work on the fucking game. You couldn't make sure that it was functioning on day one? Insanity. We have feelings about PC performance. My advice is to not wait and to make the trade-offs to prioritize what is important to you. No, here's my advice. If the game doesn't function properly at all, according to you, refund the game. Refund it. Simple as that. Like I said, the game is actually good. But if the quality of the game is not up to snuff for you, refund it. And he's not obviously going to say that. So this is where he like really fucks with me a fair bit. He says, use DLSS. It's great. The game was built to take advantage of it. This is not a competitive FPS. It is a first-person shooter, so having things like input lag are obviously very noticeable. Everyone has the freedom to believe in what they want to believe. And I know on the internet it's easy to find rage and passionate people who are convinced of all kind of things. Homie, I don't make rage bait, okay? I showed you graphs and benchmarks that showed even the most highest end was having issues, okay? Again, it would be one thing if like Jim Bob was playing with this crap top from 9 years ago, bitching about performance. I wouldn't defend Jim Bob then. I'd say Jim Bob needs to get his fucking, head in order because there are expectations he has that are unrealistic. But you have produced a game that seems to not work well at all. But I think that Randy comes from like a positive place in gaming. I think because look, at the end of the day, Borderlands 4 is a good game. It's a game that is not a live service online only slop fest. It's not a game where like even the mere act of split screen is considered a joke. The split screen in this game literally isn't a joke. Like it is fully functional like split screen. Like you can go anywhere in the game. There is like literally no content that is locked away. And the fact that I can play it like an old school 360 PS3 game is mind blowing to me. I love that part of it. And again, the fact that it's not required to connect to online services means that the game they shipped on disc is a fully completed product, at least from a gameplay perspective, is good. I like that kind of stuff, and I want to see more of it. And I'm really appreciative that Gearbox did that. It's just the fucking performance is an annoying part. Now look, before I end this video off, I want to talk a little bit about DLSS. So Randy talks about how DLSS is needed, and he says the game was built around it. DLSS was never meant to be a crutch for performance issues. I feel like this is NVIDIA marketing or NVIDIA's like bullshit that has taken center stage. So to give you an idea, DLSS is a technology that takes a lower resolution. It's actually a set of technologies, but at its core, the main bulk of it is it takes a lower resolution image, so something at like 720p, and then uses artificial intelligence that is on your card to upscale that 720 to 4K. So back when the original RTX 20 series is dropped, there was a lot of ray tracing games that came out. Some of them were Quake 2 RTX, but there were games that had, features like ray traced reflections, ray traced shadows. And depending on how you felt about ray tracing, some games were nice, some games the effect didn't really matter at all. So for games like Cyberpunk 2077, which was a pretty strong showcase, a lot of features are present here. It can be a truly transforming experience. And ultimately, if you look at older games like Doom 2, one of my favorite ray-traced games, a modder created this game, a team that put together Doom 2 and made it function with old school ray tracing, path tracing, and the game looks genuinely awesome. It looks really good, in my opinion at least. I think ray tracing and these kind of visuals work really well for older looking games, or games of this caliber. Most modern games nowadays look good enough with even traditional rendering techniques that, I played Red Dead 2 recently, doesn't have ray tracing, still looks absolutely mind-bogglingly amazing. And it runs really well on my computer. Runs really well on every computer I threw at it. Now, one thing I want to make pretty apparent is I'm not against ray tracing. I just think that there's not a lot of software that's out there right now that really shows the real strength. Cyberpunk 2077 is a game I talk about because clearly it was designed with these technologies. And, for a game like this to run as well as it does, and then on the other hand, you're looking at Borderlands 4 performing worse than this, is just mind-boggling. I mean, if you fire up path tracing, you may not notice it immediately, but if you do actually play the game and do comparisons, you will notice that, yes, with the path tracing that's applied, the shadows and darker lighting and shadow work and reflections just look more natural. And you really appreciate it the longer you play the game from an immersive perspective. But if a game can look this good and run this well, again, with the assists, why is it that a game like Borderlands, which doesn't really even take advantage of these technologies, can't achieve the same? But the thing about ray tracing is it comes at a computational cost. So you got to imagine, right? Like a system, again, a piece of software is like basically sending out rays that are bouncing off everything. And the processing power required is pretty astronomical. Back in the day on the PS1, we were playing games like FF7, where we had to use 3D generated backgrounds off of like really expensive production systems just to achieve the sort of like graphical effect on the PlayStation 1. We worked within limitations. But with ray tracing technology, we're now pushing what we can do with game engines. And sometimes I feel we have to pull a little bit back because what I'm seeing isn't really worth the frame cost. So if a game could run at 60 frames per second, toggling on ray tracing usually could push the game down to like 20, 25 frames, especially back when ray tracing first launched. So companies like NVIDIA would use technologies like DLSS, where they would render the game at a lower resolution and then upscale that. So when you ran a game at like, let's say, 600p, for instance, you could probably ray trace on the card at 60 frames per second. But you don't want to play a game at 600p. That looks disgusting. So they would upscale it, and generally it got way better over time. Now DLSS, I would say, looks pretty damn close to a native image in some cases. But then obviously as games got more evolved, as ray tracing became path tracing, which is even more intensive, game companies had to introduce something known as frame generation or multi-frame generation. So this is a very exclusive feature, at least for NVIDIA, for their newest cards, like the 40 series and beyond. So these are already people that have really strong graphic cards, and they shouldn't be needing to generate frames. So Randy was pitching an actual technology that was meant for the highest end owners on the market right now. So those guys are generating frames, and realistically, this technology could have assisted older cards. But those older cards, you know, if we're already building our games with DLSS in mind, then this technology just went in a completely opposite direction. What could have been as a technology that you used to bring life into older cards is now a requirement on even the highest end shit to achieve playable frame rates. You should not be required to use DLSS or frame generation on an RTX 5090, okay? Especially if you're not fucking ray tracing, bro. What is going on with game development, dude? I don't understand. And, you know, Gearbox isn't the only company to say this. Capcom was talking about this shit too. Alan Wake 2, one of my favorite games, was built with this shit in mind. It's crazy to see that game visuals, in some ways, yes, has gotten better, but when it comes to the tiny reflections, when it comes to the, you know, global illumination, when it comes to some of these visual effects, sometimes I can't help but feel that games that released on the PS4 generation, shit like Last of Us 2, genuinely still looks better than modern ray-traced or path-traced experiences. Yet, that game runs on hardware that is infinitely weaker than the shit we have today, and somehow functions better. It's just super wild to me, man. Like, I know that I go off on tangents when it comes to these videos, but I really am just passionate, man. Like, I feel like when we live in a world where gaming technology for PC has gotten into like thousands of dollars and like the return just isn't there, it's like the only time where I just tell people, I'm like, just get a console, man. Or you know what, better yet, stop supporting game companies that are just not willing to optimize their product. There's tons of other game companies out there that are making actual optimized products, optimized games. Spend your money there. Just when it comes to Borderlands 4, it's a shame because it's such a good game. It's just unfortunately such a poor recommendation, especially to anybody given the current state that it's in. And Randy's words aren't really helping. So ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.